It's well past midnight, maybe 2:11, maybe 3:42. You haven't checked in a while because what's the point? The clock keeps moving, but sleep doesn't. Your body is tired, but your thoughts are still pacing, worrying, remembering, reviewing. You're holding so many threads. Things you need to do, things you wish you hadn't done, things that just hurt in a way that doesn't always have words. Maybe it's anxiety, or the quiet thrum of sadness that only shows up when the house is still. Maybe you've been carrying grief, or trauma, or a life that's just been heavy lately. Whatever brought you here tonight, I'm glad you found this space. You don't need to fix anything right now. You don't need to fall asleep immediately or feel peaceful on command. You just need a place to rest your mind. And maybe a story, something slow, something soft, will help. So, let's go back. Back to cobblestone streets and wooden shutters, to a place where shoes clacked, horses steamed, and voices echoed down narrow alleyways. Let's visit a medieval town. It's still dark, but the sky is beginning to pale. Just a thread of light at the edge of the roof lines. You're curled on a straw-stuffed pallet. The room smells faintly of wax wool and the day before. And then it happens. A sound that slices cleanly through the stillness, the bell. One long sonorous note, deep, round, and echoing, not frantic, not hurried, just certain. You blink awake. Because in a town like this, bells are everything. They speak louder than law. They tell you when to wake, when to pray, when to gather, when to run. You sit up slowly. Bones creak, joints pop, straw crackles beneath you. The bell rings again. This one is the morning bell, the prime. It tells bakers to start the ovens, tells farmers to load their carts, tells children to rub their eyes and begin their chores. It's the town's heartbeat. You swing your legs over the side of the bed. Cold stone floor. One sock, one knot. You pull on a wool tunic, scratchy but familiar, and make your way toward the window. Outside, the town is stirring. A woman sweeps her threshold. A man leads a donkey cart piled high with baskets. A dog trots by, nose to the ground, tail twitching with purpose. And above it all, another bell. Shorter this time. A signal. Maybe the market is opening. Maybe a town meeting. Maybe someone died. You won't know unless you ask, or follow the sound. That's the strange comfort of life in a medieval town. You don't need to know everything, you just follow the bells. They structure the hours. They bind the community. They call you to prayer, to work, to rest, to ceremony, and to warning. There's one bell, though, the sharp one that hasn't rung, the one for fire or attack. You're grateful for its silence, because right now you don't want chaos. You want rhythm, and here the bells offer exactly that. If this voice is helping you find a little quiet, a little space to breathe, you're welcome to like or subscribe, but only if it eases your night. No pressure. Where are you right now? Lying in bed, one arm flung over your eyes, wrapped in a hoodie you haven't washed in days, curled on the couch with your phone at 5%. Whatever shape your night has taken, you're allowed to be exactly where you are. Let your body soften. Let your shoulders sink. Let the noise in your head become just a little more distant. Tonight we'll walk the slow streets of a medieval town. Not as a hero, not as a knight, just as someone ordinary. Someone who listens when the bell rings and follows where it leads. Let's begin. Hey guys, tonight we're going back to a time when waking up wasn't about alarms on your phone or sunrise meditation playlists. No, you're waking up in a medieval town somewhere between 1100 and 1400 AD, curled under a scratchy wool blanket in a timber-framed house that leaks when it rains and creaks when the wind hits just wrong. You're not alone in here either. Your family may be a couple of pigs, a few chickens, and a neighbor who never seems to leave, all under the same thatched roof. And then it happens. Bong! The bell rings. Not softly, not gently. This isn't a dainty chime. It's a full-body ironclad statement that shakes the rafters and echoes through the uneven cobbled streets like it owns the place. Because it does. This is the first bell of the day, the wake-up call. The universal signal that the town is officially back in business. The sun might not be fully up yet, but no one's waiting for that. The bell speaks, and you move. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is right now in your part of the world. I'd love to know. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You groan and sit up. The floor is stone cold to the touch, and someone's already stepped on your toes in the dark. Your mouth is dry. Your eyes are crusty. The air in the house smells faintly of burnt oats, wet wool, and something suspiciously like turnips left out too long. A baby is crying in the corner. The pigs are already rooting around underfoot, hoping someone dropped a crumb. You hear the town start to stir outside. Boots scrape against dirt. A cart creaks into motion. The dog that sleeps in the square starts barking at nothing in particular because it's his morning routine. You rub your face and throw on your outer tunic, the one that doesn't smell quite like old cheese. Not yet, anyway. The bell rings again. This time it's slower, heavier. It's not the urgent clang of alarm, but a stately bong that means business. You know the tone. This is the daily order bell. It's announcing time for prayers, time for work, time to remember that life is short and taxes are due. You duck through your door. Watch your head. Everyone's doors are about 2 feet too short, and blink at the morning light. The streets are already alive. Smoke from breakfast fires curls up between rooftops. The town stinks in the most energetic way. Damp wood dung yeast. Something floral maybe, but probably not on purpose. Historians agree that Bells were central to timekeeping in medieval towns, long before clocks became a common fixture. Most towns only had one bell, maybe two, if they were fancy. So the rhythm of daily life was completely dictated by these reverberating iron voices in the sky. And there's something strangely comforting about it. You don't have to know what time it is. You just have to know what the bell means. Someone clatters past you, carrying a basket of bread, yelling about how the oven door fell off again. Someone else is already sweeping muck out of their front step. A monk is moving with purpose toward the chapel, his eyes fixed on the ground as if it might offer him something better than the sky ever could. You wander toward the center of town, following the lazy stream of villagers who all look equally half awake. The bell sounds again, but lighter this time. The bell ringer's being merciful, or maybe just saving his arms for later. It tolls 3 times, an indication that morning mass is about to begin. Now, whether you go is another matter. Technically, not showing up to prayers is frowned upon. In some places, it's even punishable. But then again, so is stealing eggs, letting your chimney smoke too much, or walking on someone else's shadow during Lent. Rules are fluid. You linger by the market square instead, watching as stalls are set up. Someone drops a barrel and swears. Another person is arguing loudly about the price of onions. The bell tolls again. This time you feel it in your chest, a reminder that whatever you thought you were doing today, the town has its own schedule. There's something oddly satisfying about this simplicity. You don't check your watch. You don't scroll. You just listen and react. But it's also relentless. The bell doesn't care if you're tired or if your ankle hurts or if you got into a shouting match with the fishmonger yesterday. It rings, and you move. Still, for all its authority, the first bell of the day isn't unkind. It's the gentle nudge, the polite but firm tap on the shoulder from a very large, very metallic hand. It wakes up the bakers, the brewers, the grave diggers, the gossips. It reminds you that even if the world smells like fermented cabbage and wet dog, you've got things to do, people to see, porridge to overcook. You glance back up at the bell tower as the sound fades. The silhouette of the ringer is visible, barely a shape, hunched over the ropes. One of the most powerful people in town, really. He's the heartbeat, the rhythm, and tomorrow he'll do it all again. The bell fades, but you're still moving, because in this medieval town, the bell is the clock. You can't check your phone or glance at your wrist to figure out what's next. You just wait for the next metallic voice from the tower to tell you whether it's time to pray, bake a semble hide, or panic. The sun's climbed just high enough to warm the stone walls a little, but it's still mostly gray out with a damp chill clinging to the air like a needy goose. There's dew on the cartwheels, and someone's dumped out yesterday's dishwater into the middle of the street, which splashes satisfyingly, if alarmingly close to your shoes. Then another bell. 2 quick strikes this time, sharp, clean. That's your cue, mid-morning activity. The church will say it's for terce the third canonical hour, but for everyone else, it's the signal to get to it. If you're a merchant, it's time to open your stall. If you're an apprentice, it's time to get yelled at by your master. If you're a peasant, well, every hour is get to it hour, but now it's official. You pass by the smithy, where the hammering has already begun. Sparks shoot out from under the awning, and the rhythmic clang of iron on iron blends oddly with the toll of the bell. It's like a duet between man and metal, though one is definitely more on key. At the baker's, the air is thick with yeast and scorched crust. A boy runs out, his face covered in soot and flour, clutching a half-burnt loaf like it's treasure. You don't ask. Maybe it is. People are pouring into the square, and there's an unspoken choreography to it, all set entirely to the beat of the bell. Here's the wild part. Historians still argue whether medieval towns actually standardized their bell tones or just hoped people would figure it out based on context. Did 3 short tolls mean market opening everywhere? Or just in towns where the bell ringer wasn't creatively bored that day? One town might have used 6 tolls for prayer, another for a lost goose. But what's consistent is the reliance. When the bell speaks, you trust it. And more than that, you react to it without really thinking. Like birds at a feeder, like boomers hearing a landline phone ring, you're conditioned. A new sound joins the mix, now the creak and groan of the town gates being opened. That sound is your actual boundary between "we're just sleepy villagers" and "please no bandits today." The bell coincides with the gates unlocking, like it's giving the okay. Time to let in the merchants, the gossip, the occasional tax collector, boo, and the rare traveling minstrel who always seems to have one string broken and at least 3 dramatic stories. You walk toward the main well as others gather around it. No plumbing, of course. You want water, you carry it. Every single day. And the bell doesn't care how heavy your bucket is. You get your water now because when the next bell rings, it's probably time to pour it on something or someone. The well area smells of damp rope, stale moss, and a hopeful trace of lavender someone once dropped in a bucket last week. Beside the well, a few women are chatting, not loudly, but definitely about you, or about someone who looks like you, which in this town might as well be the same. Did you hear the second bell was late yesterday, one murmurs? I heard it was early. Maybe he's gone daft or drunk. You pretend not to listen, but of course you are. Because the bell ringer's reliability affects everything. If he's off by 5 minutes, the whole town jitters like someone sneezed during a chess game. And yes, bell ringers got in trouble for bad timing. It was a job of trust. You don't want a bell that's just vibing on its own schedule. Still, there's humor in it. Imagine if your alarm clock overslept and had to be shaken awake by your neighbor yelling, "Oi, we missed Prime again." Oh, right, Prime. That's the bell that rang even earlier, around sunrise. You might have missed it, or ignored it, but it was there. Prime terce sext, none. all part of the liturgical time structure. Not that you care about theology before breakfast. The average medieval person didn't name the hours. They named the bells. A bell for morning wake-up, a bell for prayers, a bell for gathering, a bell for brewing, a bell for stopping, a bell for hiding, a bell for, oh no, he fell in again. It was less about time and more about what the time meant. And in a strange way, it was liberating. You didn't measure your life in minutes. You measured it in sound. The metallic echo told you who you were, what came next, when to kneel, when to run, when to scrub that suspicious-looking rash and hope it's not plaguey. The bells were your schedule, your alarms, your breaking news, and your bedtime lullabies. And you loved them, even when you hated them, because at least they made the world make sense, however smelly, chaotic, and drafty that world was. You hear another distant clang off tempo, like someone dropped something metal in the alley, and flinch. False alarm. But the habit stays. Your ears are always listening, and the bells, they never lie. They just tell you when it's your turn to move. You wander further into town, guided more by instinct than purpose, and of course by the next bell you know is coming soon. But before that, you catch your first real breath of morning and, well, it's not exactly invigorating. There's a phrase you once read, something about how the Middle Ages smelled like hope and horse manure, a little poetic, a little tragic, and honestly, not that far off. Right now, standing in the middle of the muddy lane, surrounded by half-timbered houses and thatched rooftops curling inwards like gnarled fingers, you're greeted by a symphony of scent. Some notes you recognize immediately. Damp hay, fresh bread, someone's soap bucket gone awry. But the dominant aroma, the street itself, it's not just dirt. It's not even just mud. It's centuries of unpaved decisions, a blend of animal droppings, spilled stew, laundry runoff, and maybe someone's chamber pot tossed from the upper window a little too carelessly. You inhale carefully, that tang probably fermented cabbage from the cart 2 doors down, that smoky edge, likely wood ash from the communal oven. But the sharp ammonia-heavy undertone, that's just life without plumbing. This is a world where animals walk beside you and sometimes into you. A goat nudges your thigh with a guilty expression. A piglet skitters by with what looks like half a turnip in its mouth. It's adorable. It's chaotic. It's definitely not sanitary. Historians still debate just how bad medieval towns really smelled. Some argue that people were nose-blind to it, having grown up among the stench. Others point to documented complaints about filthy streets from within the period itself, proof that no one was really thrilled about it, even back then. You, of course, are just trying not to step in anything that squelches. The bell sounds again. This time, it's the market readiness chime, a cheerful clang that tells people it's safe to start selling things, or at least yelling about things they want to sell. And suddenly, the town transforms, like clockwork, well like bell-work wooden stalls pop open like clam shells. Canvas awnings snap into place. Crates are flipped barrels, thumped chickens yanked from cages and waved around like feathered advertisements. A man juggling onions is already shouting about how his are definitely fresher than yesterday's. The streets turned into a human current, flowing toward the town square. You follow, because how could you not? There's an energy here that's hard to resist. Despite the mess, despite the noise, despite the toddler having a full meltdown next to a cart of eels, this is where people gather to talk, to trade, to spy, to be seen. The bell in this case is less about permission and more about expectation. If you're a vendor and you don't show up after the market bell, people notice. Whispers start. Has he been cursed? Did she run off with that lute player? Maybe the rats finally got him. You sidle past a stand selling questionable cheese and the vendor locks eyes with you. You look like a man who appreciates a robust aroma, he says proudly, gesturing to something that smells like regret. You nod vaguely and move on. Quickly, there's a young girl hawking dried herbs nearby. Her voice is high and surprisingly authoritative. Cures cough, wards off spirits, and smells better than your feet. Hard to argue with marketing like that. Further down, someone's selling eel pies. Again, because it's always eel pie. You don't know who decided eels should be food, but you'd like to go back in time and have a word with them. Preferably while holding a fork. It's not all food and smells, though. A man is hammering out contracts beside the stone wall, an early notary of sorts. He's surrounded by suspicious parchment and a small but loud argument between two sisters over a pig that may or may not have trespassed. It was your fence, Greta, one of them hisses. Then why did your pig kiss my rooster? Greta retorts. The bell doesn't chime for gossip, but maybe it should. This place is loud, alive. Everyone operating on the same rhythm, the same cues. Even the pigeons seem to know when the bell rings, fluttering just slightly off-timed, like tiny feathery dancers in a chaotic parade. And underneath it all is the sense that time is not measured in minutes, but in moments. The bell told you to start your day. The bell told the market to begin. The bell will tell you when it's over. You walk slowly past the fabric vendor, letting your fingers brush the rough linen. There's no silk here. Not in a place like this. Maybe wool if you're lucky, and don't mind the itch. Somewhere a baby wails. Somewhere else a pig squeals in response. Someone sneezes and blames the devil. All very normal. You're halfway through the square when someone drops a crate of apples. A sharp thud, a few curses, and now children are scrambling like squirrels to steal the best ones. One older man calmly picks up an apple, sniffs it, then pockets it with all the grace of a saint. The owner sees nothing, or pretends to. You settle onto a bench beside the baker's wife. She's humming, shelling peas and ignoring everything around her. The smell of rising dough wafts from her basket, warm and yeasty, and just strong enough to distract you from the fish guts someone spilled nearby. "Bell's running late today," she mutters. You nod. She's right. The midday bell should have rung by now. You glance toward the tower. Nothing. Then suddenly, bong. There it is. The crowd pauses, just slightly. Not in fear, in acknowledgement. Like an old friend, clearing their throat at a party to remind you they're still here. And then the chatter resumes. Because here, when the bell rings, life doesn't stop. It just shifts. The midday bell lingers in the air like smoke, a low resonance that settles into the cracks between voices, footsteps, and cartwheels. You feel it in your chest more than you hear it, a hum that tells your body instinctively that this is the halfway mark, a signal to pause, or for most, to shovel something edible into their mouth before collapsing in the shade. Lunchtime. Though, of course, no one's calling it that. The word lunch wouldn't become popular for several hundred more years. Here, they call it dinner, or just the meal which feels refreshingly no-nonsense. The naming doesn't matter. What matters is that the bell has given you permission to eat, or at least to stop pretending you weren't already thinking about it. A few people duck inside nearby homes, emerging minutes later with hunks of rye bread, dried fish, or if they're lucky, last night's stew, scooped straight from a pot that may or may not have ever been washed. You suspect it hasn't. But hey, that's just more flavor, right? You find yourself drawn to a shady patch near the church steps. You're not alone. The steps are wide, cool, and unofficially designated as the universal break room of the medieval working class. A man next to you unwraps something in a cloth. It's hard to tell what it is, but it smells aggressively oniony. He eats it with the same enthusiasm people today reserve for food trucks. You nod in solidarity and pretend your chunk of bread is more exciting than it is. There's no proper break room here, no hour-long siesta, just the bell's grace and whatever you brought in your pocket. The thing is, most people don't eat 3 full meals a day. That idea, purely modern. In medieval towns, 2 meals are the norm, morning and evening. This midday snack, optional, luxurious even, reserved for days when there's enough to spare. And today, thankfully, seems to be one of those days. A teenage boy nearby is gnawing on what looks like an entire turnip raw. He winces with every bite, but keeps going. Turnip gumption, a hallmark of the era. Overhead, the sun is at its highest, which means there's no more guessing what time it is. Just look at the shadows, or don't. You're here to rest and to listen, not just to the bell, but to the entire ecosystem it governs. Because here's the thing, the bell doesn't just mark the hour. It regulates sound itself. It's the loudest voice in town. When it rings, others fall silent. Then slowly, the murmur builds back up like ripples after a stone hits still water. And you float in those ripples now, letting them carry you. 2 women nearby are talking in low tones. You catch a word here or there, something about a missing chicken, something about a wedding, something about that boy who always smells like vinegar. You try not to laugh. Someone starts humming, just a few notes carried gently on the breeze. Not quite a song, more of a habit. And someone else joins in like a sigh in harmony. Music, it seems, is one of the few things in this town not regulated by bells. Historians still argue whether these informal lunches were social rituals or just a necessity of labor. Did people gather like this because they wanted to connect, or because it was the only time their bodies forced them to stop? Probably both. A cart creaks by, piled high with sacks of grain. The driver nods at you, then frowns, noticing something. He leans over, mutters a curse, and kicks one of the wheels. It doesn't help, but it feels satisfying. In the distance, a dog barks. Another dog responds. A third dog barks in confusion, unsure what the conversation is about, but refusing to be left out. Typical. Then quietly at first, but unmistakable, you hear the whisper of the bell rope being pulled again. It's not time yet, but someone's testing it. You glance toward the tower. Sure enough, a young apprentice is tugging gently on the cord, checking tension, preparing for the next toll. It's oddly sweet, like watching someone wind a music box before a show. And it is a show in its own way. The bell is a performance. Its timing, crucial. Its tone, memorized by every ear in town. A single note too flat or too rushed, and people panic. Or worse, they gossip. There was a town once historians loved to tell this story, where the bell ringer got drunk and rang the evening bell 3 hours early. Chaos ensued. Shops closed, prayers were skipped, dinner was burned, and at least one person proposed marriage thinking it was twilight. No one was pleased, except the goat who got an extra nap. You stretch your legs out, feeling the stone steps warm under your calves. The air smells slightly better. Now someone nearby is chewing mint leaves, and it's masking the usual undercurrent of dung and despair. This is what passes for peace here, and honestly, it's kind of lovely. For a moment you stop being a visitor. You just are, part of the rhythm. Another heartbeat in the body of the town. Then the bell rings again. 3 short tones this time. Evening prep. Back to work. Or more accurately, the second half of your work. Because in this world, done isn't really a thing. There's just until the bell says stop. You rise slowly. So does everyone else. The man with the onion wrap tosses his cloth over his shoulder like a cape. The boy with the turnip takes one final bite and grimaces with pride. The women gather their baskets. The humming fades, and the square begins to move again. You brush crumbs from your tunic, still tasting the last bits of your very crusty bread as you step off the church steps and rejoin the flow of the town. The post-lunch atmosphere has shifted. It's not sleepy. This isn't some Mediterranean villa with naps and olive groves. But it is slower. The sun is still hot. The animals are still confused. And everyone's still waiting for something else to happen. You walk toward the smithy where iron and muscle make music of their own. It's hard not to notice the rhythmic clang of the hammer, which somehow always ignores the bell's schedule. The blacksmith is like a percussionist with a vendetta. Shirtless, sweat-slick, and glowing with soot, he hammers at a horseshoe like it insulted his mother. The sparks fly upward, tiny fireworks that seem to defy the sleepy lull of the early afternoon. "Don't mind him," says a boy sitting outside, chewing on what might be leather. "He doesn't hear the bells. He is the bell." You chuckle, then immediately wonder if that was a joke or just a profound medieval truth. Hard to say. You move on. By now the market has thinned out. Some stalls have closed for the day. Others are just in denial. One woman with 2 cabbages left is yelling as if they're made of gold. A man with no teeth and 6 onions waves them at passers-by like party favors. Everyone else is either packing up or pretending to help so they don't get roped into real work. This is the stretch of time when jobs get messier. The bell's last ring reminded people to start winding down. Not that it's already over, which means it's errand time. You join a group heading toward the communal well. There's a kind of unspoken agreement. If you're not helping with something, at least carry a bucket. Water isn't just a convenience. It's currency. It bathes, cooks, cools, and occasionally even gets drunk. Though most folks will still tell you to stick to ale because at least you know what's in that. You pass a woman scrubbing clothes on a flat stone. The soap smells like lard and rosemary, and the suds drift toward a drainage trench that you pointedly avoid stepping near. It burbles like it wants to talk. You don't want to hear what it has to say. A rooster runs by. Why, no one knows. Maybe it's late for something. Maybe it just hates you. Again, hard to say. There's a quiet acceptance here that time isn't fixed. The bells try to keep order sure, but everything else, the animals, the work, the conversations, they all move in their own tempo. Historians still argue how precisely these bells structured medieval life. Some believe they were rigid, defining. Even when you could use the bathroom spoiler, there was never a great time. Others think they were more like gentle reminders. Hey, just so you know the day's moving along, might want to move with it. You arrive at the well. There's already a line. Of course there is. A donkey tied nearby snorts dramatically, as if he too is frustrated by the inefficiency. The girl holding his rope ignores him expertly, weaving a basket while standing in line. Multitasking 12th century style. Someone ahead of you fumbles their bucket. It bounces once, then rolls into the gutter with a sad wet slap. A collective groan rises, followed by a soft chorus of unhelpful advice. Should have tied the handle better. That's what you get for daydreaming. Maybe you are cursed. No one helps, but everyone watches. Eventually, your turn comes. You pull up a full pail of cool, slightly murky water. It smells faintly of moss and minerals, and compared to everything else you've encountered today, it's practically perfume. You carry it carefully through the street arms, aching toes, lifting instinctively over every cobblestone crack. Spilling this would feel like a personal failure, not just because of the effort, but because people will see, and they will comment. The bell hasn't rung again yet, but you feel its approach. It's like standing before a wave you know is going to hit gentle, expected, but firm. Your arms ache. You put the bucket down just outside the baker's window and glance inside. The baker is asleep, sitting up, mouth open, a ladle dangling from one hand like a relic from a forgotten war. A fresh loaf smolders nearby, half burned. You respect his commitment to both carbs and naps. You sit beside the bucket. A child skips by singing something about frogs and soup. Another yells that the church goat is stuck on the roof again. No one moves. They all assume someone else will deal with it, the goat included. You lean back against the stone wall. The warmth from earlier is still there, now diffused and more forgiving. The sun no longer glares, it glows. Everything feels quieter, slower, like the town is collectively exhaling. And then, gung. This one's longer, a deeper ring, the workday bell. That gentle but firm reminder, whatever you were doing, stop soon. Start cleaning, start packing. If you need to barter, do it now. If you haven't prayed yet, well, good luck. You gather yourself. The bucket's lighter now, probably because someone sneakily used it while you weren't looking. Or maybe it just feels lighter because the day is almost done. You join the other villagers, drifting homeward. Dust kicks up in lazy swirls. Laughter mingles with the creak of wheels and the clink of tools being locked away. No one's in a rush, because the bell didn't just end the work, it blessed the return. The bell's last echo has barely faded, but already it shifts the town's rhythm again. The momentum you saw in the morning, then the stillness of the midday lull, now gives way to a new current. You feel it in the footfalls around you. People are moving with purpose, but not urgency. The day is stretching toward evening, and the work may be done, but life isn't. You follow the current toward the outer lanes of the town where the houses are less proud. They slouch a bit wood-weathered, and wattle-cracked their doors, swollen from years of rain and gossip. The people here aren't the worst off, but they're not hosting feasts either. You pass a woman brushing soot from her doorway with a bundle of sticks. She looks up and nods, maybe recognizing you, maybe just being polite in the quiet sort of way that happens when everyone's too tired to speak, but still wants to be seen. You turn the corner and find the town's communal oven. Yes, the giant stone one, the one that radiates both heat and controversy. Because nothing in this town inspires more passive-aggressive drama than bread rotation. There's a list, there's a time slot, and there's always someone who pretends they didn't know they were supposed to wait. You lean against a low wall and watch as a young man slides his dough onto the hot stone floor, then dusts his hands with exaggerated flair. A middle-aged woman 3 feet away snorts so hard You can hear her disapproval echo through the flour. Too early, she mutters. He hears it, pretends he doesn't. Historians still argue whether communal ovens were egalitarian innovations or just fuel-efficient ways to start a weekly feud. Either way, the fire is constant, and the gossip even more so. Someone offers you a lump of raw dough. You can try it, they say, but it's mostly rye and regret. You politely decline. As the oven scene simmers in more ways than one, you wander toward the edge of town, drawn by a rising melody. It's not music in the modern sense, no harmonies or instruments. It's a pattern of voices rising and falling as someone tends to the sheep pens. They're calling to the animals in tones you don't quite understand, but the sheep clearly do. They shuffle into their fenced corner with a series of unimpressed bleats, kicking up the kind of smell that sticks to your memories more than your clothes. If someone bottled medieval essence, it would smell like this wool hay and just a hint of fermented pea. You don't linger. Back on the main path, a group of children is chasing a stick with wheels. That's the game. That's it. And they're having the time of their lives. One girl sprints past, arms out, like wings declaring that she is queen of the fast horses. No one argues. She is, in fact, very fast. It's moments like this that sneak up on you, those small, unrecorded details. The silly, charming nonsense that rarely survives parchment. But this is what life really was, not epic wars or royal decrees, but bread and sheep and children arguing over a wheel stick. And always underneath it, all the bell. You catch its shadow now, stretching long over the rooftops. The sun is sliding lower, and the tower casts a cross-hatched net over the town like a sleepy fisherman pulling in the end of the day. There's a noise, subtle but different. A small, handheld bell. Someone is walking the lanes with it, ringing softly and calling out, "Prepare for evening prayer." You half expect someone to shout back, "Already," but they don't, because they knew this was coming. The bell tells you, not always with its own voice, but through the routines it inspires. The air begins to cool. A breeze slips through the alleys like a careful thief. Laundry lines ripple, and so do conversations. The older folks settle onto benches. Their eyes are heavy, but they're not done watching the world just yet. You glance up at the sky. A few clouds are streaked with pink, the kind of color that feels like a reward for putting up with everything else. You walk past the tannery and immediately regret it. That is not a place for the evening. If you've never smelled medieval tanning, congratulations. It's unforgettable. Rotting flesh, dog urine, pigeon droppings. Yes, all real. Yes, they use those things. No, you can't unsmell it. You pick up the pace. Eventually, you reach the green near the church. Not a perfect lawn, more like a flattened field where goats occasionally lose arguments to geese. A few families are spreading blankets, sitting on tree stumps, or just leaning against each other. This is evening in motion. No screen time, no happy hour, no emails to answer, just people and bells. The main bell is due to ring again soon. This next one is different. The bell for evening prayer isn't about work or food. It's about reflection. Even if you're not particularly devout, you know that when it chimes, the town will pause, not to rest, but to listen. You sit on the edge of the green and wait with them. A soft murmur flows around you. Someone is carving a spoon. A boy is balancing on one foot for no reason. A dog sighs. Then with no fanfare, just inevitability, bon. The tone is deeper, slower. It doesn't demand attention. It draws it gently, like the sound of a door opening on creaky hinges. You let it wash over you. This isn't the final bell. Not yet. But it's the first sign that the town is turning inward. You don't speak. You just sit and listen. The bell fades like a yawn you didn't mean to make, but now everyone's doing it. The sound doesn't stop the town exactly. It just shifts the mood. A kind of reverent slowness descends like the entire place agrees to take smaller steps and speak in lower voices. You get up from the grass and dust off your tunic, which is now embedded with enough straw and goose feathers to start a small pillow enterprise. You join the gentle migration toward the church, not because you're particularly religious, but because, well, what else are you going to do? This is what happens now. The bell says so. As you approach the church doors, you pass the old woman who sells waxed thread and knows everyone's business. She eyes you with a knowing smirk and leans in. You've never been to Vespers, have you? You start to respond, but she pats your arm with finality. It won't kill you, but you might get poked by a hymnal. Inside the church, the air is cooler, still echoing the stone's memory of morning prayers. Candles flicker from iron holders. Their smoke curls upward like it's looking for something to confess. You slip onto a worn bench at the back. The wood creaks with theatrical protest, as if it knows you're an outsider. The prayers begin not shouted, not whispered, just recited, like a lullaby with fewer rhymes and more Latin. You let the voices drift over you. There's no sermon, no dramatic miracle, just ritual rhythm and repetition. Historians still debate whether medieval evening prayers were moments of genuine devotion or just a convenient way to kill time before bed. Maybe both, maybe neither. It doesn't matter much right now because the murmured chants are strangely soothing, like someone humming a tune they've known for decades. You glance around. A few children are slumped against their mothers. A man in the front row has definitely dozed off, head tilted, mouth slightly open. You silently admire his commitment to multitasking. After the final amen, everyone moves at the pace of soup cooling, slow but with direction. Outside, the sky has darkened, not black, more like a deep blue wool blanket being pulled gently over the world. You step into the twilight and feel the hush that follows prayer. You'd think this would be bedtime. It is not, because there is still the evening bell. You wander back through the lanes now, lit only by occasional torchlight or the pale gleam of hearths behind windows. The smells have changed too. Less manure, more wood smoke and porridge. A pig trots by with what appears to be a sock in its mouth. No one stops it. Frankly, it seems like it earned it. You pass a group of teenagers loitering near the hay cart, trying not to look like they're loitering. One picks at a lute string absently. Another throws pebbles at a rat with the resigned grace of someone who knows the rat always wins. They nod at you. You nod back. A tiny moment of solidarity. Yes, we're all still awake. No, none of us really knows why. Down near the small pond, an old man sits alone, sharpening a knife that doesn't seem to need sharpening. Maybe it's a metaphor. Maybe it's just what he does after Vespers. He hums a tune you vaguely recognize, possibly something about a rooster that owed a knight some rent. The bell tower is silhouetted now, a dark figure against a sleepy sky. You can feel the town holding its breath, just a little. The last bell is the one that says, enough. You've done your part. Time to stop pretending you're still busy. And then, bong. It's slower, deeper, less a bell, and more a distant reminder from someone who loves you, but is very, very tired. You stop walking. So does everyone else. Not in fear, just out of agreement. A few shutters close. A few candles are snuffed. Somewhere a child is being bribed into going to sleep with the promise of one more story about the wizard who turned goats into monks. It didn't end well. You step off the main path onto a side lane that leads past the baker's house. He's there again, standing in his doorway, hair tousled, still chewing something you hope is bread. Evening bell, he mumbles, like it's the title of a sad poem. You nod. Long day, you say. He nods back, but not the worst, which honestly is high praise by medieval standards. You walk a bit farther and find a low stone wall near a patch of lavender. You sit, let the scent wrap around you. The stars are beginning to show, not in the modern light show kind of way, just timid little sparks. You wonder how many people looked up at them back then and thought, yep, that's probably heaven. Historians still argue what the average peasant believed about the stars. Some say they thought stars were holes poked in the firmament by angels. Others believed the stars were fireflies nailed in place by God. Some just thought they were cold, distant things, pretty but pointless. You lie back on the wall. The stones cool against your shoulder blades. There's no sound but the occasional bark of a dog or the shuffle of someone drawing a curtain. The bell has done its job. The town is slowing to stillness, one footstep at a time. You don't move for a long while. You just breathe. You've heard the bells, seen the work, felt the dust. And now you let the quiet seep in, not the kind that demands anything, but the kind that simply is. A soft wind brushes past your ear, carrying with it the last fading echo of the evening bell. You close your eyes, not to sleep yet, but to listen better. Your eyes are still closed, but your ears are open. The silence After the bell isn't total, nothing ever is in a medieval town. There's always some leftover clatter, a goat kicking over a bucket, the faint click of a latch being drawn, the low murmur of two voices, too invested in a conversation to pause just yet. But compared to the day, this is stillness. It's the kind of quiet that settles into your bones and tells your brain it's okay, you can shut down now. But you don't. Not just yet. Because one last thing happens in the wake of that final bell night rounds. See, just because the day's done doesn't mean everyone goes to sleep. That would be far too efficient. No, someone has to make sure the fire hasn't jumped from a chimney to a rooftop. Someone has to make sure no one sneaks into the bakery to steal a hot loaf under the cover of darkness. And someone has to catch old Toma sneaking into Widow Elsbeth's yard again. He insists he's just retrieving a chicken. Historians suspect otherwise. You hear them before you see them, the soft metallic jangle of keys, the creak of leather boots, the low grumble of a man who wishes he were in bed, the night warden and his lantern. You rise from your lavender-scented seat just in time to see him pass. He's older than most, with a beard that looks like it tried to retire 5 years ago, but got called back in. His eyes sweep the street with the weariness of someone who's seen one too many accidental fires. You nod. He grunts. That counts as a conversation. He stops at the base of the bell tower, checks the latch on the chapel door, then moves on light, bobbing like a lazy firefly. You follow at a distance, stepping lightly, half invisible in the gloom, not hiding exactly, just observing. You're good at that now. The houses are quiet save for a low thud here and there, a dropped pot, a rebellious toddler being herded into a straw-stuffed bed. One house still has its shutters open, and you catch the flicker of candlelight illuminating a woman's face as she carefully braids her hair. Not for anyone else, just because it helps her sleep. The warden pauses at the edge of the market square. He turns in a slow circle, lantern held high. It casts long shadows on the ground, revealing briefly a black cat, a broken wheelbarrow, and a cart, still loaded with turnips someone forgot to wheel home. He shakes his head at the turnips, not out of concern, just disappointment. Historians still argue whether these nightly patrols were about protection or performance. Were they genuine safeguards, or did they mostly exist to look like someone was doing something useful? Either way, the result was the same. Fewer fires, fewer break-ins, and fewer excuses. You notice something peculiar as you trail behind the lantern light, a soft humming. Not from the warden, he wouldn't dare. It's coming from just beyond the square, near the old well. A woman stands there, cloaked and still, hands cupped around something small. A candle. No, a bundle of herbs. She's muttering softly, facing the moon. A prayer, a charm, a bedtime wish. She finishes, drops the herbs into the well, and walks away without seeing you. There's always someone like her in town, a quiet practitioner of something not quite Christian, and everyone knows it, but no one speaks of it. Because when your cow gets sick, or your baby won't sleep, you might just find yourself at her door. You pause by the well and look down. Blackness stares back. You step away. Back in the direction of the warden, he's nearing the town gates. You hadn't even realized how close they were. Now, nearly shut, only a sliver of countryside remains, visible beyond the heavy wooden doors. Just enough moonlight to remind you how small this town really is, how tightly its people cling together once the bells fall silent. The warden leans against the gatepost and pulls out a small pouch. A few chews later, he's got a mouthful of something brown and bitter. Not tobacco. This is earlier than that. Likely roots or bark. He spits, shrugs, and stares into the dark like it might owe him money. You don't follow him further. You turn back, retracing your steps through a town now fully wrapped in its evening hush. Even the rats sound sleepier now. Less scuttling, more loafing. You pass the baker's house again. No light now. Just the soft scent of yeast escaping the cracks in the shutter. You turn a corner and nearly trip over a dog. It lifts its head, squints at you, and then drops it again with a sigh so human it should come with a tax form. You offer a quiet apology and continue on. At the edge of the green, the moonlight reveals a trio of geese huddled under a bench. You give them a wide berth, not out of fear, out of respect. Those beady eyes have seen things. You pass a stack of firewood arranged too neatly to be random. Someone's prepared. Someone else is not 2 houses down. Someone's just now remembering they forgot to bring in the kindling. A door creaks open, and a man in socks hops across the yard like a frostbitten rabbit. You smile. Just a little. This is what happens when the bell stops. The town doesn't sleep immediately. It settles, like flour at the bottom of a sack, like mud after a flood. It takes time. You head toward the center again, not for a reason, just because you're not quite ready to lie down. The bell tower looms above you once more, and in that moment, quiet, hushed, cold, you finally hear it. The absence of the bell. It's louder than the sound ever was. It means everything else gets a turn. You close your eyes and listen to everything that remains. You're not sure how long you've been standing there, beside the tower, under the weight of all that silence. It doesn't matter. Time in a medieval town isn't measured by minutes. It's carved into chunks before the bell, after the bell, before the market, after the plowman sings. Your heartbeat and the occasional snuffle of livestock are the only clocks anyone trusts. You drift down another lane, your feet soft on the dirt path. The houses here are older, more crooked, more patched together. Thatch sagging like tired eyebrows, stones shifted slightly over centuries of rain and regret. You pass one with a crumbling archway and a wooden sign that might have once meant Cooper's shop, but now just looks like a sad emoji made of wood rot. You slow as you hear something unusual, a gentle creaking, not ominous, not scary, just persistent. You follow it and find a man with a long, lean frame rocking in a chair out front of his cottage. He's not asleep. His eyes are open, half-lidded, watching nothing in particular. You missed the bell, he says without turning. You start to explain that you didn't, not really, but he waves a hand. Don't worry. It rings, whether you hear it or not. You sit on a nearby stump. No invitation, no objection. That's how things work now. He's whittling, slowly, deliberately. A bit of wood becomes, well, it might become something eventually. Used to be, he says they'd ring it twice if there was a fire, 3 if the Lord was murdered, 4 if the monks wanted a second dinner. You blink. He shrugs. That last one's probably a joke. Probably. You ask why he doesn't sleep. He chuckles. Son, you think this place sleeps? You think those pigs snore through the night? Or that the wind waits till morning? And he's right. Because even now you hear things. Not many, but enough. A small cough 2 houses over. A rustle in a hayloft. The plaintive squeal of a cart axle that should have been greased 2 seasons ago. Historians still debate whether medieval peasants slept in 2 phases, a first sleep and a second sleep, with a stretch of wakefulness in between, often filled with quiet chores, prayer, or talking to neighbors across low fences. This man seems like he's deep into his between sleeps. He offers you a hunk of bread, dry, stale, possibly older than the tower itself. You take it because that's what you do, and also because there's something comforting about chewing something that tastes like dust and determination. He resumes whittling. I used to be a bell ringer, he mutters, after a pause, back when my knees worked. You glance toward the tower, and then back at him. You ask what it was like. He smiles, loud. He goes quiet for a while. You chew. Somewhere a rooster gets confused and lets out a single sleepy crow. Everyone ignores it. The man squints up at the sky. You know, he says, we only got 1 bell now. Back then, we had 3. 1 for prayer, 1 for danger, and 1 for, well, we never quite figured it out. It rang once every few months and scared the chickens half to death. He chuckles again. Maybe it was for ghosts. You don't ask if he's joking. You just nod. You stay there for a long while, watching him work the wood into something slightly less shapeless. Eventually, he sighs. Well, that's enough. He stands with a grunt, tucks the wood into his cloak, and steps inside without another word. The door creaks, then clicks shut. You're alone again. Sort of. Because now you can hear something else. From a distance. Very faint. The sound of weaving. It's a particular kind of noise, wood sliding against wood. The rhythmic thunk of a loom beam. The sharp tug of wool being drawn taut. It's coming from the weaver's hut near the edge of town. You follow it. Because what else would you do? The weaver's door is ajar. A thin sliver of lamplight cuts across the path like a golden crack in the darkness. You don't enter. You just watch. Inside, an elderly woman works the loom. Her hair is loose silver and long. It sways with every motion. She doesn't look up, doesn't speak, just moves with the steadiness of someone who has done this more nights than you've had dinners. She's not weaving for sale. Not at this hour. This is different. You watch the pattern emerge in the fabric. Red, gold, brown, thread by thread, beat by beat. No one really knows why some medieval folks did their best work at night. Historians suggest the cool air, the stillness, or maybe just the luxury of doing something quietly alone. Others think it was spiritual, part of a vow, or an act of silent worship. Some think it was just insomnia with better marketing. You stay a while soothed by the rhythm. Eventually, the lamp flickers. She sighs, ties off the final thread, and douses the light. You slip away as gently as you arrived. Back on the path, the sky has fully opened to the stars. Not a dramatic starry sky, just enough specks to remind you the world is bigger than this town. But right now, this little village feels like the entire planet. You find your way back to your bed of straw behind the chapel. The town has finally exhaled. Even the rats are asleep. You lie down, arms behind your head, eyes on the stars. You think about the bell, how it rang and then stopped, and how somehow that made room for everything else. The night air has gone colder, but your body's adjusted. Your breath still clouds in the air, but slower now, like your lungs have learned to move in time with the town. There's no blanket over you, except the sky, and even that has a few holes where the stars poke through. Somewhere behind the chapel, a cow sighs in its sleep. You wonder briefly what cows dream about. Probably not bells. Probably grass. Maybe revenge. You roll to one side and listen again, because that's what you do now. In a world without clocks or podcasts or insomnia apps, the only thing you can do is lie very still and become a better listener. And here's what you notice. The bell isn't the loudest part of the town. It never was. It just made you forget how noisy silence could be. A cartwheel creaks gently as it shifts in the frost. A door groans in its frame somewhere up the hill. The wind rustles that one shutter that never quite latched properly, no matter how many times its owner swore he'd fix it. You close your eyes, and for a moment you forget your body entirely. But the night isn't over, not even close. Because just as you're drifting into that velvety almost sleep there, it is a soft crunch. Hay, underfoot. Or something like, hey, close, near your makeshift bed. You don't sit up. You don't speak. You just listen. Another crunch, then a low grunt. Then, yes, the unmistakable sound of someone muttering to themselves while dragging a bucket. It's the miller's apprentice. She's always up this early, or late, depending on how you slice the night. She doesn't notice you as she passes by, too absorbed in her own ritual of trudging toward the stream with 2 empty buckets and a soul full of resentment. She mutters again something about her older brother, something about her boss, something about not getting paid enough to feed chickens who won't even make eye contact. You don't blame her. Historians still argue whether medieval apprentices were glorified slaves, honored learners, or just warm bodies someone could shout at legally. The truth was likely all three, depending on the day. She disappears behind a row of hedges, and you hear the slosh of water soon after. That's the thing about nights like this. You begin to understand the invisible schedule of people you've never really spoken to, not through gossip or conversation, just from the rhythm of footsteps, the squeak of hinges, and the quiet sighs people think no one hears. You decide to stretch your legs. The town hasn't changed, but it has slightly. There's a fine dew on everything now. The barrels glisten. The cobblestones shine with the thinnest layer of frost. Even the chickens look dewier somehow. One flutters in its sleep and emits a sound that's either a chirp or a curse. You step lightly past the bakery now, dormant. Earlier, you smelled fresh bread. Now, the only scent is ash and cooling bricks. Behind the bakery in the shadows, something shifts. You pause. Then from the darkness emerges a cat, large, black, unapologetic. It stops, looks at you, then walks away with the deliberate strut of someone who owns the place and has nothing left to prove. You follow it. Not because you think it leads anywhere, just because it feels like it might. It takes you past the farrier's workshop, empty now, but filled with the ghostly scent of scorched iron and wet hooves. You wonder how anyone sleeps with a memory of that much hammering lodged in their ears. You pass the well again, now quiet. No herb women tonight, just the wind sighing past the stone. You wonder how old it is. Older than the chapel, probably. Maybe older than the town. Maybe it was here before anyone had a bell to ring or a reason to build walls. The cat hops up onto the stone rim and stares down into the well like it's waiting for something to return. You wait too. Nothing does. The cat glances at you unimpressed, then disappears into the dark. Fair enough. You take a different path back toward the grain store, which always smells like spilled dreams. The big wooden doors are barred, but you can hear a mouse banquet taking place somewhere inside. The soft scurrying, the occasional thud of a falling grain sack. You're half tempted to knock just to see if they stop. They don't. The wind picks up slightly, and you pull your cloak tighter. Though, let's be honest, it's barely a cloak. More of a blanket with aspirations. But it's enough. You stop near the edge of town, where the hedges begin to thin, and the first glimmers of dawn threaten to stretch into the sky. Threaten, but not yet. A rooster gives a confused half-crow. Another answers, with a noise that sounds more like a sneer. The roosters here have drama. You sit on a log that wasn't here yesterday. Maybe someone dragged it here. Maybe it sprouted overnight just to be useful. You lean back and close your eyes. You think about the bell again, how it rang to mark the end. But really, it marked a beginning too. A beginning of all the things that don't fit neatly into the daylight. The whispers, the wandering, the private patterns of people when no one's watching. You think about the woman Weaving the apprentice, grumbling, the cat strutting like royalty, the man who once rang the bells and now just carves wood and stories. And you realize the town is never silent. The bell just teaches you when to listen harder. You lean back against the log and let out a long, soft breath. And for a few golden seconds you forget to be awake. Somewhere between the rooster's third false alarm and the first twitch of purple in the sky, you wake again. Or maybe you never quite slept. It's hard to tell in this town where sleep is something people do in installments and silence never really signs off for the night. You sit up slowly, brushing a few stray bits of straw from your tunic. It doesn't help. You still look like someone who lost a bet with a hay bale. That's okay. No one's judging, except possibly the goats who have a very particular way of staring. You wander past the chapel again, its stone walls glowing faintly in the blue hour before dawn. The bell tower looms above, silent now, but in your head it still rings. You wonder if that's how the old bell ringer felt after retiring, if phantom bells clanged in his dreams, or worse, in moments of silence. Historians still argue whether churches truly stood at the literal center of medieval towns, or whether they were simply the emotional nucleus gravity wells of ritual guilt and gossip. Either way, this chapel has its own pull. You circle around the back, past the crumbling gravestones and moss-softened walls, until you reach the garden. Yes, the garden. You didn't know it was here, but now you do. It's not much, just a rectangle of soil bordered by tired stones. But it's alive. Even in the faint light, you can make out the silhouettes of cabbage leeks, something that might be sage, or might be whatever the medieval version of kale was. It smells like damp dirt and humility. A hunched figure moves between the rows. You freeze. Then the figure straightens, and you recognize her, the nun, the one who waters the garden before matins, who always mutters to the snails as if they're fellow parishioners. She doesn't speak to you, just nods, an acknowledgement that you exist, that you're part of this quiet hour now. You watch her for a while. She moves slowly, pulling weeds that barely qualify as threats. She whispers to the leaves. You can't hear what she says, but you're pretty sure it's not Latin. It's softer than that. You realize this is the quietest corner of the town. Not the darkest, not the most hidden, just quiet. The kind of quiet that grows on purpose. She hums under her breath a tune that has no urgency, no destination. It's the sound of someone who has all the time in the world, or at least has made peace with how little of it she controls. A light cough startles you. You turn to see an elderly man bent bony with a walking stick made from a branch that might still be technically alive. He tips his head toward the chapel, but says nothing. The nun nods. The two walk in together. Matins is about to begin. You slip away before the chants start, not because they're unwelcome, but because you've heard them before. And you'd rather keep this moment suspended in dew and silence. As you walk back into the heart of town, the air begins to shift. The stillness frays. A door clicks open. A dog barks twice, then decides It's not worth it. A rooster, now emboldened by the actual sunrise, lets out a crow that could wake a saint. You smile. Even the pigs have started to stir. One kicks at its trough, like a child demanding breakfast. Another grunts at the mud, like it betrayed him in a dream. You pass the smithy. Inside, the fire's already lit. You see the glow flickering through the cracks in the shutter. The forge breathes like a dragon with sleep apnea. The apprentice. This one's a boy, stands outside, yawning so wide his jaw might unhinge. He wipes soot on his sleeve without realizing he hasn't picked up any soot yet. Some habits happen before the action, as if summoned by muscle memory alone. You stop and ask if the bell woke him. He shrugs. Didn't need to. My father did. That tracks. In this town, the bell doesn't wake everyone, but it reminds everyone of what comes next, of what must be done. Even the bakers are stirring again. You can smell it now, that warm, yeasty promise of sustenance. The scent curls through the air like a rope, pulling the town slowly upward, one nostril at a time. You follow it. The bakery is awake. The oven sighs with warmth. The baker's wife, hair up in a scarf face, streaked with flour, waves absently as she beats a lump of dough into submission. It's a ritual, maybe even a therapy session. That dough knows what it did. Hungry? She asks. You nod. She tosses you a heel of bread, still warm, still steaming slightly. First loaves for the birds, she mutters. Seconds for the saints. Thirds for me. You glance at the hunk in your hand. She grins. Fourth's yours, I suppose. You eat, slowly, because warmth is rare and should be savored. The crust is so crunchy it might qualify as medieval armor. The inside is soft, dense, but honest. As the sun lifts itself over the rooftops, the town begins to coalesce again, like bread rising, like the tide returning. You hear the sounds of wheels creaking, doors unlatching, feet stomping frost off boots, voices low at first, then clearer. And somewhere, someone starts humming the tune you heard in the garden. You look up at the bell tower, now golden with morning, and for a fleeting second, you think you see someone there, a figure just beneath the bell, watching the town below. But when you blink, they're gone. Maybe it was the old bell ringer. Maybe it was just a trick of light. Or maybe the bell never truly stops echoing. The town is fully awake now, stretching its limbs and scratching the sleep from its metaphorical eyes. You feel it not just in the bustle, but in the way the light seeps into the corners that were shadows all night. Morning light in a medieval town is a slow sideways thing. It slinks in through warped shutters, crawls across cobbles, and finally curls into doorways like a lazy cat. You step into it, and everything feels a little softer, though the cold still nips your ears like a disapproving ant. You're not the only one wandering. People have started gathering near the town square. A small cluster of villagers is arranging goods on cloth-covered carts. Someone stacking turnips with theatrical flair. Another is folding bundles of wool that still smell faintly of sheep and faintly of soap, though let's not pretend it's modern soap. Medieval soap is basically sadness shaped into a bar. A child runs past, chased by another child, who is in turn being chased by a goose. It's unclear who started it, but the goose is clearly winning. You step out of the way. The market is assembling itself like clockwork, or rather, like bell work. No mechanical gears, just the muscle memory of people who've been doing this forever. There's no official opening. No one shouts, and we're live. The bell rang last night, and somehow that's enough. It gave permission. It whispered to the town, you may begin again. Historians still argue whether medieval markets were scheduled events or constant low-key exchanges that just flared up whenever someone had turnips. The truth is, both happened. Some days had more bustle, more shouting. Other days, like this one, the market is just a social ritual disguised as commerce. You pass by a cart stacked with clay pots. The merchant nods at you as if you're expected. You nod back, pretending you know exactly what a proper pot should cost in this economy. Spoiler alert, it's 3 eggs and a half compliment. The air smells like wood smoke, damp wool, and something roasting that may or may not be edible. You pause near a woman with a brazier and a skeptical rabbit on a spit. She raises an eyebrow at you. Still wriggled this morning, she says proudly. You pass. Near the well, 2 men argue over chickens. Not about chickens. With chickens. One swears his is more obedient. The chicken disagrees. A group of older women gathers near the fountain, baskets in hand. They don't shop. They spectate. This is their theater, and the actors are just lucky to have an audience. You hear one whisper, "That's her second basket of radishes this week," as if it's a scandal. Maybe it is. You make your way toward the edge of the square, where a man with a long cloak and a too confident mustache is hawking miracle cures. Bottles line his table, each one a different shade of hope. He holds one aloft. Cures pox, warts, melancholy, and husbands who won't listen, he says. You raise an eyebrow. He winks. Side effects may include honesty. Historians still debate whether these traveling potion peddlers believed their own claims. Some likely did. Others were in it for the drama, the flair, the theater of it all. A performance, much like the town itself. You drift away before he tries to sell you something that glows. Just past the commotion, there's an old man sketching faces in the dirt with a stick. No one notices him. He doesn't sell anything. He just draws. And when a gust of wind erases one face, he nods, as if that's part of the process. A dog sneezes nearby. A child drops a coin into a puddle and wails like kingdoms have fallen. The town moves on. You find a spot on a stone bench beneath a crooked sign. It once had paint, but now it just looks sunburned. You sit and you listen. It's not the bell anymore, not really. But the rhythm of the town pulses with the memory of it, like a ripple that never quite fades. You hear the low grind of a cart's wooden wheel. The splash of water being thrown across a stoop, the clatter of hooves on packed earth, a lullaby sung to a baby who refuses to nap on schedule. You watch as two monks pass by their robes too long and their expressions too grim for the brightness of the day. One slips on something and mutters in Latin. You're not fluent, but you recognize a curse when you hear it. The baker's boy walks past with a tray of loaves when already missing a bite. He meets your eyes and shrugs unapologetic. Further down the road, the town crier practices his announcements. He hasn't shouted anything yet, just rolls the words around in his mouth like he's tasting soup. He might shout news later, or a warning, or a wedding. But for now, he waits. The bell already did its job. You stretch. A woman with a lute strums a few notes on the corner. They're not in tune. She doesn't care. A pig near her seems to enjoy the sound. You wonder if music affects bacon quality. You start to walk again, slower now, letting your feet take you where they want, which happens to be nowhere in particular. That's the magic of a medieval morning. There are no alarms, no deadlines, just the knowledge that the town has been doing this longer than anyone remembers and will likely keep doing it long after you're gone. The sun finally climbs above the rooftops, golden and bold. A breeze lifts your hair, then drops it again, like it lost interest. Somewhere a bell, in another town, rings faintly in the distance. You imagine someone there, blinking awake, yawning, rolling their eyes, and wondering why everything smells like goat. You keep walking, not because you have somewhere to be, but because the town is awake now, and you're part of it. You wander back through the crooked lanes, past doors that swing open to reveal the drowsy bustle of morning chores. The world smells like damp stone-boiled porridge and the persistent underlying tang of livestock. And yes, you've learned by now that medieval towns always carry that faint eau de barnyard, like someone sprayed a little pig behind each ear. The sun is officially up now. It spills through a high window and lands in a golden puddle on the dirt. Someone's cat is already curled into that spot tail, flicking with the confidence of an animal that has never once paid rent. You move past the tanner's yard quickly. That's not a place you linger unless you've recently lost your sense of smell. If you ever doubted that making leather meant soaking hides in fermented urine and animal brains, now's the time to correct that misunderstanding. It's not just unpleasant, it's aggressive. The air attacks your nostrils like it's been personally wronged. Even the flies seem to be holding their breath. Historians still argue whether medieval towns actively tried to regulate tanneries or simply shoved them as far downwind as possible. Based on this particular experience, you're willing to bet on the latter. You hold your breath and make it through. Somewhere behind the butcher's stall, a dog is barking like it just remembered a personal vendetta. It probably smelled sausage. Or maybe the ghost of sausage. Hard to tell. You duck past a woman scrubbing wooden bowls and dip into a quieter alley. This one leads toward the edge of town. The walls here are lower. The ground softens from stone to packed dirt. You see more greenery, more sky. A low fence marks the border between town and field, though it's more symbolic than defensive. You cross it, and just like that, you're outside. It's a different quiet out here, less muffled, more open. You can hear birds, actual birds, not just the ones caged for market. They sound surprised that you've joined them, like they weren't expecting company this early. You walk past a meadow where two sheep are having a mild disagreement. It might be about territory. It might be about grass. It might be because one sheep looked at the other sheep's hooves for a beat too long. A woman nearby is milking a goat with the practiced nonchalance of someone who's done this since before she had permanent teeth. She nods at you and you nod back because nodding is medieval for, I see you, but let's not make this a whole thing. You keep walking. The path winds past low hedges and crooked trees, their branches bent from years of wind and teenage boys climbing them. The air is sweeter out here, less smoke, more soil. You pass a small hutch where rabbits blink at you with suspicion. One is chewing something that may or may not be edible. You choose not to question it. There's a bench up ahead, more of a log, that gave up on being a tree and decided to commit to horizontal life. You sit and you breathe. This right here is the part of the medieval town people often forget. The outskirts, the liminal zone, not quite wild, not quite urban, where people live slower, work quietly, and occasionally shout at goats. Someone's hoeing a row of vegetables just beyond the ridge. You can't see their face, but you can hear the rhythm, scrape, thud. It's almost meditative, like a heartbeat, but with slightly more soil involved. A cart rumbles by on the road behind you, pulled by a pair of horses with more dignity than most kings. The driver is humming something mournful and oddly catchy. You catch yourself humming it too. There's a moment where the wind picks up brushing the grass until it ripples like the sea. You stare at it, hypnotized. It's just wind, just grass. But somehow it's the most peaceful thing you've seen all day. You lie back on the log and look up. The sky is imperfect. Some clouds, a bit of gray at the edges. But it's big, and it belongs to no one. And in a world where everything else has a price, your bread, your boots, your breath, it's nice to remember that the sky is free. Well, for now, you close your eyes for a moment, just one. You don't sleep exactly. You hover, that soft, slippery state where the world becomes muffled cotton and time forgets to count. The grass smells like childhood. The breeze whispers stories that no one else hears. And then a bell, faint, not the town's, distant, perhaps another village. It doesn't scare you this time. It soothes, because now you understand it's not just a bell. It's a signal, not of alarm, but of rhythm, of continuity, of one day replacing another, like shoes passed down from sibling to sibling. You sit up slowly. The town is still behind you, its rooftops peeking above the treetops like shy sentinels. The smoke from the baker's chimney curls upward in a lazy spiral. You walk back, not because you must, but because you want to. You pass the goat woman again. She's now arguing with the goat about something deeply philosophical. The goat is winning. You both pretend not to notice. You pass the meadow where the sheep have settled their argument by ignoring each other aggressively. The air is warmer now. The town welcomes you back without fanfare, without question. Because here you belong. And the bell, it's part of you now. Just like the mud on your boots, the soot in your nose, and the faint memory of rabbit stew you never tasted. You step back into town as if rejoining a play, mid-act. The market's rhythm has quickened. What began as quiet murmurs and polite bartering has evolved into full-throated haggling, the kind that could wake a statue, or at least mildly annoy one. Someone's yelling about apples, someone else is yelling about cheating, and a third person is yelling just to yell. It's less chaotic than it sounds. Somehow it all works. Like a symphony, where the instruments are goat's gossip and the occasional spoon slamming against a pot lid. You move past a group of children playing a game with stones and sticks. It's unclear whether it has rules or if they're just flinging things and yelling gotcha. One child solemnly declares himself mayor. Another immediately stages a coup. And then you hear it again. The bell. But not the same tone as last night's or this morning's. This one is different, brighter, higher pitched. It's not calling the town awake or warning it of doom, no. This one announces something else entirely. It's the midday bell. And in a medieval town, that means it's time to pause. You watch as movement slows. Merchants stop shouting long enough to sip from mugs. Blacksmiths wipe soot from their brows and lean on anvils like old men leaning on memories. Even the geese seem momentarily less aggressive. You wander toward the center of the town square, where once again the bell hangs like a tired guardian. It's not massive, not dramatic, just a metal mouth that speaks 3 times a day and expects everyone to listen, and everyone does. Historians still argue whether midday bells served primarily religious or civic purposes. Some believe they marked time for prayer. Others insist it was about keeping the town on a shared schedule. Meals, chores, trade. But maybe it was simpler than all that. Maybe it just meant, hey, breathe. So you do. The sun now sits straight above the roofs, casting almost no shadow. The kind of light that flattens everything, makes colors harsh, and details sharp. It's not cozy, it's honest, and it shows you everything. Like the line outside the soup stand. You shuffle in just because everyone else is. That's a very medieval instinct, follow the crowd and hope they're headed towards something edible. You get handed a bowl. What's in it is, well, it's brown, possibly lentils, possibly regret. You take a cautious sip. It's not bad. It tastes like someone tried really hard with very little, which, now that you think about it, describes the entire town. You find a step to sit on and cradle your soup. Around you, conversations unfold in a dozen directions. A woman complains about the baker raising prices. A man wonders whether he's cursed or just unlucky. A boy lists all the frogs he's seen this week in impressive detail. One man sits nearby and simply stares at his hands. You wonder what he's thinking. You wonder what you would think if your days were defined by bells and goats and the possibility of stepping in something unfortunate every 10 feet. You sip your soup again and try not to dwell on the texture. Just beyond the square, you hear music. Real music this time. A small trio of traveling performers has arrived. One with a flute, one with a lute, and one who hits things with other things in an attempt to keep time. They're not amazing, but they are enthusiastic. The flute player starts a tune that sounds like it wants to be a dance, but hasn't had coffee yet. The lute follows along. The percussionist lags behind, possibly distracted by a chicken. Still, people gather, that's all it takes. You rise bowl empty now and walk toward the music. The performers are smiling in that way people do when they know they've brought something precious into a space that didn't expect it. Joy like a smuggled gift. Children clap offbeat. A dog howls, but maybe in support. A few brave souls start to dance not well, not smoothly, but with heart. You imagine for a moment joining in, but instead you sway, because that's enough. One woman pulls another into the open space and spins her. Both laugh. Their laughter rises higher, then the flute fuller, then the drum. A moment of joy that belongs to no one but them. You feel the bell's presence still, not ringing, not echoing, but waiting, like it knows this is temporary, that soon things will move again, that labor and dust and dull gray stone will resume their place. But for now, the bell allows this pause, a rare kindness in a world not known for softness. You stay until the last note fades, until the drummer drops one stick and decides it's a sign to stop, until the crowd slowly melts back into the rest of their day. You make your way down a side street where washing lines stretch like spider webs. Clothes flap in the sun, each one telling a story. You don't know how many hands mended them, how many mouths they've fed. A woman hums as she pins a tunic, the tune familiar from the market earlier. You duck beneath a line and emerge near the cooper's shop. Barrels in varying stages of barrelness surround the open door. Some hoops, some staves. One barrel looks finished, but unsure of itself. The cooper is working silently, every movement purposeful. A chisel here, a tap there. You watch as he fits the parts together, like a puzzle no one else can solve. Historians still debate how much skill was involved in such trades. The romantic versions paint these craftsmen as geniuses of wood and fire. Others suggest they were just folks who learned to repeat what worked. Probably both. Probably neither. The cooper glances at you, but says nothing. And that's enough. You move on. Past the weavers, past the tailor's past, a boy trying to teach a chicken to fetch back to the square, where like clockwork, no like bellwork people begin to stir again. The soup stall packs up. The market murmurs resume. The dog has returned to claiming ownership of a small sun-warmed patch of dirt. The bell isn't ringing, but it has rung, and everyone knows what that means. You take one last look around the soup still warming your belly, the music echoing faintly in your ears, the rhythm of life settling back into place. The town breathes, and so do you. You decide to drift, letting your feet do the thinking for once. The midday lull has passed, and the town resumes its gentle thrum like a spinning wheel, catching rhythm again after slowing for a breath. Even the chicken seems slightly more motivated. One flaps its wings with a sense of purpose that feels wildly out of proportion for a creature that lays eggs and pecks pebbles. You trail along the edge of the marketplace where a smith is now back at her forge. The clink and hiss of metal are back steady and sharp. She doesn't look up as you pass, too focused, too practiced. The sparks flare like little fireflies with deadlines. You admire the simplicity of it. Heat, metal shape, repeat. It's violent in a way, but comforting. At least you know the rules. Across the lane, a baker's boy balances a basket of rolls with the poise of a tightrope walker. One roll teeters. You almost reach out instinctively, but it rights itself, and he marches on victorious and unaware of your small emotional crisis on his behalf. Not far away you hear the low murmur of something serious. People gathered in a semicircle, shoulders close, heads angled downward. The crowd is thickest near the town's notice board, if you can call a crooked plank nailed to the side of a wall a board. Someone's posted something new. You slip in closer, pretending to care about the previous tattered announcements. One mentions a missing goat, though you suspect the goat simply decided it had better things to do. Another warns against suspicious apples. You don't ask. And then you see it a fresh decree still curling at the corners. The town's lord, who you've yet to see in person by the way, has ordered new labor to reinforce the walls. Something about roving bands, suspicious movement in the woods. The usual blend of vague threat and mandatory effort. Historians still argue how much these public decrees actually impacted medieval townspeople. Were they read with reverence, ignored with a shrug, used to wrap fish? Maybe all three. You hear a man mutter, "I've just patched my roof now. They want my hands for stone." You step back, letting the crowd absorb the message however it chooses. For some it's routine, for others it's worry. For you, it's a reminder that behind the cobblestone charm, this town is always preparing for something. You wander on, toward a part of town you haven't explored yet. The architecture grows shabbier. Here walls lean a little more. Windows are fewer doors, look more kicked than opened. This is the workers' quarter, less picturesque, more real. You pass a stable where the smell punches you in the face like it's trying to win a tournament. Horses clop impatiently inside. A boy brushes one with lazy swipes, half focused, half daydreaming. You nod. He nods. It's an unspoken agreement of, yeah, we're both here. A nearby yard hums with industry. Spinners, dyers, coopers, all hunched over their tools, creating the unnoticed objects that make the town function. Baskets, buttons, buckets. You get the sense that half the town could vanish overnight and no one would panic unless these folks went missing. You watch a woman weaving with hands so fast they're a blur. The thread shifts, colors earth tones, mostly nothing flashy. But the pattern takes shape with soothing logic. Over, under, twist, tighten. You lose track of time just watching her. But then, a familiar sound. The bell. Again. This time it's lower, slower. A long pause between strikes. The evening bell. You feel it in your bones before your ears register the sound. It signals the start of the winding down. Not quite night, but close enough that people start to think about what they haven't done yet and whether they'll bother doing it. People begin packing up. Not urgently, just steadily. The rhythm of closure. A woman gathers herbs from a stall, wrapping them in cloth with practiced grace. She smells like time and disappointment. Probably a healer, or someone who just doesn't trust the town doctor. You walk along the inner edge of the wall now where the shadows stretch longer than the people casting them. The light's gone amber, touching everything like a gentle goodbye. You pass a cat perched on a barrel. It judges you, as cats do, and you silently agree that, yes, you probably deserve it. A boy lights one of the lanterns by the gate. The flame flickers, then catches casting a warm glow that feels more symbolic than functional. It won't ward off much, but it says we tried. Historians still debate whether these lanterns served a practical purpose or were more ceremonial. Given how dim they are, you'd lean towards ceremony, unless everyone in the Middle Ages had owl vision. You turn back toward the heart of town. The bell has stopped, but its echo lingers in the stones. Even the air feels quieter, not silent, just expectant. You pass a church now, its door open. Inside, a single candle burns near the altar. No congregation, just a space held open for whatever hopes or regrets people might whisper into its silence. You step in, not because you're devout, but because it's peaceful and slightly warmer. The air smells of wax old wood and something faintly metallic, like the memory of bells. You sit on a bench and exhale. Your breath fogs slightly in the air. You watch it vanish. There's no sermon, no choir, just quiet. You close your eyes, not to sleep, but to listen. To the wood creaking under your weight, to the wind sneaking in through the stained glass cracks, to the town settling again into its bones. Outside, another lantern lights. The day is folding itself away like parchment, and you somehow are right where you should be. When you step back out of the chapel, the light has slipped lower, painting the street in honeyed gold. You blink as if the quiet inside had blurred your vision slightly, and maybe it did. The town has changed again, not drastically, but in the way a face changes when it stops performing. Evening in a medieval town isn't dramatic. It's a soft decrescendo. No one shouts, no one runs. They just withdraw, like candles flickering out one by one. You walk with less urgency now, matching the pace around you. A few people still tend to chores, but even the goats seem less enthusiastic. One stares into nothing, chewing as if bored with existence itself. You get it. At a corner you haven't noticed before, a group of women gather with baskets and thread. They're mending clothes together, fingers, nimble conversation, low and rhythmic. One makes a joke about her husband's socks, something about them having more holes than a saint's patience. The others laugh, not loudly, just knowingly. There's a comfort in how much can be fixed with quiet hands and shared time. You slow as you approach the edge of the communal well. It's less crowded now, just one man drawing water. He moves slowly, as if the crank is part of his body. The water sloshes into a bucket with a splash that feels louder than it should. He doesn't acknowledge you, doesn't need to. Historians still debate the role of wells as social hubs. Some argue they were gossip centers. Others see them more as contested resources. But tonight it feels more like a threshold, a marker. Once you pass it, you're leaving the bustle behind. And so you do. The streets are quieter now. Doors are closed, shutters drawn. You sense, rather than hear, people settling inside. The rustle of straw being fluffed, the creak of beds being occupied, the heavy exhale of a town exhaling with you. You spot a flicker, a head firelight leaking from a blacksmith's forge, not for work, just warmth. The smith sits nearby, no longer hammering, just watching the embers. A mug in one hand, the other resting on her lap. She glances at you, then away, not dismissively, just tired, the good kind of tired. You keep walking, past a home where someone strums a stringed instrument, not expertly, but not badly either. The tune is wistful, familiar, like something you once heard in a dream you've since forgotten. The air smells different now, less sweat, more smoke, a blend of cooking fires dying down, and tallow candles just beginning their shift. A child somewhere whines, then giggles. A dog barks once, then silence again. You find a low wall to perch on. Your feet thank you. From here, the rooftops seem to lean in toward each other like old friends sharing secrets. Above them, the sky begins its fade into indigo. A single star blinks into being shy, maybe, or just early. You realize how little you've thought about time today. Sure, the bells mark it, but you've stopped measuring it in hours. It's become sensation instead. Warmth, hunger, light, sound. A gentle way to move through a world. As you sit, a woman passes by carrying a tray. On it, small dark loaves, probably rye, possibly edible. She knocks on a door, leaves one, moves on. A kind of evening ritual. You wonder if anyone ever thanks her, or if she just enjoys the rhythm of it. You follow her with your eyes until she turns a corner and vanishes into the evening. And then you notice a group gathered near the far end of the square. 5, 6 people, maybe more. They stand around a low fire pit, warming hands and sharing bread. One pours something steaming from a jug. The smell wafts toward you. Herbs, maybe mint, possibly something stronger. You wander closer, not to join, just to witness. They're not talking much, but they're together. That's the thing about medieval towns. Life is communal, even when it's quiet. You don't have to speak to share space. You just have to show up, be present, breathe the same smoky air. A boy notices you, offers you half a crust. You take it. He grins. He's missing a tooth, possibly more. The crust is dry, but warm. It tastes like effort. You chew slowly. One of the elders by the fire starts to hum a low, tuneless sound. Maybe a song, maybe just memory. The others don't join, but they don't stop him either. He hums until it fades into silence. You're not cold, but you pull your cloak tighter anyway. It feels appropriate. Above, more stars have arrived. The kind of stars you can only see where candles rule the night and darkness isn't feared, just accepted. Historians still debate how medieval people understood constellations. Some say they mapped the heavens with remarkable precision. Others claim they feared what they couldn't name. But you think tonight they just looked up and said, "That's nice," and went to bed. You lie back on the wall, careful not to startle the cat, who somehow appeared beside you. She blinks slowly, then closes her eyes again. You take that as permission to exist. From this angle, the town looks softer, less like stone, more like fabric, worn but warm, frayed but familiar. You imagine this same scene 100 years ago, 100 years from now. Different faces, same fire, different worries, same stars. There's comfort in that. You breathe in. Let the night settle in your chest. You're not from here. But tonight you belong. You don't remember when you started walking again, only that your feet are carrying you somewhere quieter. The fire circle fades behind you, leaving only a soft glow, like the final ember of a shared story. Now, the town is nearly silent. You move past shuttered windows. The wood is warped and creaky, but it does its job. Behind those walls, people are undressing, unwrapping their feet, brushing crumbs from the table, maybe whispering a final word to a child already half asleep. And you are the last slow breath of this day, a quiet observer to its settling bones. You find yourself drawn toward the edge of the town where the walls meet fields. The stone pathway thins here, gradually giving way to dirt, to weeds, brave enough to grow where boots have forgotten to stomp. And then, just ahead, a small structure tucked against the inner wall. You think it might have once been a guard post, but now it looks more like a shed with aspirations. You push the door open, gently, half expecting to wake someone, but it's empty. Dust motes dance in the air, like old memories, refusing to settle. There's a bench, a tiny window, and that's enough. You sit. Outside, the last light of day is nothing but a suggestion. The horizon has swallowed it, tucking it away until tomorrow decides to unfold again. And above, stars bloom with audacity. No city glow to compete here, just raw night sky, shameless and vast. You look through the window and see the silhouettes of fields beyond the wall. Rows of furrows, patches of grass, maybe a scarecrow, though it might just be a tree stump in a hat. You can't tell. And honestly, it doesn't matter. What matters is that even out here, the world hasn't stopped. A night bird calls. A breeze tiptoes past. You hear something rustling, a hedgehog, perhaps, or a very shy cat. You decide not to check. Historians still debate the nature of nighttime fears in medieval towns. Some say villagers were terrified of demons, bandits, even wolves. Others argue they feared the unknown in general, that when the candle died, imagination did the rest. You're not scared, though. Not tonight. Because everything around you feels slow, grounded, almost suspended in thick, drowsy air. You lean your head back against the wall. A piece of straw pokes you in the shoulder, and you make a face. Somewhere out there, a stable boy probably senses the disturbance in the straw force. You smile at your own thought. Because that's the thing, when the noise dies down, your brain picks up the slack. Not with worries, but with drifting fragments. A bakery roll, a humming elder, a bell echoing in your bones. That bell again. Even now, hours later, its pattern clings to your memory like soot on fingertips. You realize the town has been shaped by it. The bell is the heartbeat. It tells the people when to rise, when to work, when to pray, when to eat, when to stop. You wonder what happens if it ever falls silent. Does the town stop too? Would people keep going or wait, heads tilted, listening for a sound that no longer comes? Theories abound. Some say the bells in some towns were once operated by monks in shifts so rigorous they aged before their time. Others suggest apprentices learned not just how to ring, but how to listen, so they could predict exactly how many strikes to pull before supper. Scholars argue over how centralized timekeeping shaped medieval identity. You don't. You just know the bell meant it was okay to pause. You stretch your legs, feel the coolness of stone seeping through the soles of your shoes. The wind whispers through a crack in the door. Nothing spooky, just a breeze checking in. You glance around this tiny space again. There's something honest about it. No art, no furniture, just the bare idea of shelter. But you're not bothered, because here in this nothing space you have found stillness. And maybe that's the real luxury of the past. Not peace, but pace. Nobody's trying to optimize the evening. No to-do list, no blue light wrecking your melatonin. Just the dark, the stars, and the occasional, what was that in the bushes? You wonder what the townspeople are dreaming about. Probably nothing fancy. Not castles or dragons or riches. Maybe just warm bread, or their child's fever breaking, or that the neighbor won't notice the stolen turnip. You feel yourself sinking lower on the bench. It creaks, but in a familiar, almost reassuring way, like it knows your weight now, like it expected you. You imagine the bench saying, "Ah, yes, another tired wanderer pretending not to be sleepy." Fine. You admit it. You are sleepy, but not in a rush. You let your eyelids droop just a little, enough to blur the room into soft smudges of shadow and grain. You picture the bell one more time, not ringing, just waiting like everything else, like you. Something wakes you, but not with urgency. It's not a scream or crash, just a sound, faint, distant, yet oddly specific. A bell, but not the panicked, all hands on deck, clanging of danger. No, this one is soft, deliberate, almost hesitant. You sit up slowly, joints cracking in protest. The bench releases you with a creak that might as well be a yawn. Outside, the sky is darker still, if that's even possible, thick with night. Only the stars, now multiplied, provide contrast. The bell rings again. One long tone, followed by two shorter ones. You frown, not because you're confused, but because you recognize it. It's the bread bell. Yes, that was a thing. In some towns, especially smaller ones, a unique bell would ring early in the evening or late at night to announce bread for the poor or leftover loaves from the day's baking. If you were awake and hungry, you could come collect it. But you had to hurry. The bell didn't wait. You rise, legs stiff but cooperative, and head back toward the market square. The walk is quiet. No surprise at this hour, but not dead. A few cats slink across your path. One stops to judge you, then moves on. And then, as you near the square, you see them, figures. Not many, maybe half a dozen, all drifting toward a table that's been set up beneath the awning of the baker's stall. A woman stands behind it, apron still dusted with flour, handing out loaves with a practiced rhythm. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. The bread is coarse, probably barley or rye. A bit burnt, maybe, but it's warm. You line up behind a man with a beard so long it's braided. He hums quietly to himself, something tuneless, more habit than melody. When it's your turn, the baker offers you half a loaf. You nod your thanks. She nods back. Transaction complete. You don't eat it yet. You tuck it under your arm, still feeling the heat. That's part of the ritual. Not just food, but presence. A shared ritual, even in silence. Historians still debate whether these bread bells were charitable acts or pragmatic crowd control. Some say it was compassion. Others argue bakers just didn't want leftover inventory attracting rats. Probably both. You sit on the stone edge of a nearby fountain. No water flows tonight. It's more decorative than practical at this hour, but it makes for a decent seat. Around you, the other bread seekers do the same. No one talks, not out of awkwardness, just because there's nothing that needs saying. You're all here, you're all awake, and you're all chewing very dense bread. It tastes slightly of ash, and also of relief. A boy a few paces away offers his crust to a dog. The dog accepts with such solemnity that you'd think it was officiating a ceremony. The boy smiles. The dog licks his hand. This is the kind of affection that doesn't need words. You take another bite. Still ash. Still good. Overhead, the bell falls silent again. Not in a tragic way. Just finished. The night resumes its hush. You think about all the ways bells punctuate this world, not just for emergencies or religion, but for daily life, for food, for bathing, for remembering, for forgetting. Some bells tell you to gather, others tell you to leave, and some, like this one, tell you you're not alone. That's a powerful thing. Even now, you're not quite sure what time it is. Midnight later, earlier. But it doesn't matter. The bell rang, and you came. That's enough. You wonder if towns had different bell sounds, high-pitched, for markets, low and rolling for church, harsh and sharp for danger. Like a medieval ringtone menu, probably not as customizable, but more reliable. You finish the bread, rub the crumbs from your hands. It's time to wander again, but slower now. You pass the stalls dark and folded in like resting animals. A stray lantern flickers somewhere, casting light that seems more memory than flame. You spot the bell tower in the distance. Not the main one, this is a smaller one perched above the guild hall. Blacksmiths, you think? Earlier, someone mentioned the blacksmiths had their own bell. You'd assumed it was decorative. Turns out it's not. That particular bell meant shifts were over. No more hammering, no more glowing coals, just cooling iron and the sigh of satisfied muscles. You approach the guild hall. The doors are locked, of course, but a candle still burns in a window upstairs. Someone's awake, maybe scribbling notes on iron weights, maybe dreaming with their eyes open, maybe listening for a bell that only they can hear. Historians still argue whether guild bells influenced local law and order. Some claim towns adjusted curfews based on trade schedules. Others say guilds used their bells to protest taxes because why riot when you can just make really annoying noise? You circle the building and find a small bench near the wall. Sit again. This is your fourth or fifth sitting spot tonight. Each one feels different. Each one changes your thoughts. You think about the town as a symphony of bells, a living clock, but less precise, more emotional, a place where sound isn't just functional, it's intimate, and the people, they respond like instruments, moving, stopping breathing, pausing, you included. Your eyes close for a moment, just to listen, not to sleep, not yet. And somewhere in the distance, a cow moos, a single, lonely moo. You whisper back, "I know, buddy," and smile into the night. You're still chuckling to yourself about the cow when a new sound catches your ear. Distant, erratic. A bit like someone ringing a bell who doesn't actually know what the bell is for. Clang, clink, bonk. Not exactly rhythmic. More like accidental percussion. You tilt your head toward the sound and stand curiosity outweighing fatigue. As you drift down the alleyways, the houses on either side seem to lean in, eavesdropping on your footsteps. The air is cooler now, early morning air with that dampness that settles on stone and skin alike. Eventually, you come upon the source. A confused man in travel-stained clothes, standing dead center in the square, staring up at the main bell tower like it just insulted his mother. In his hand, a stick, and he's waving it around, muttering. You can't help but watch. Turns out this is what happens when a foreigner walks into a medieval town and doesn't speak bell. He hears a chime and panics. What does it mean? Is it a fire? A curfew? A secret meeting of goose worshippers? This guy has no idea, and he's clearly tried to copy the signal, as if by mimicking the tone the townsfolk will appear and offer clarity. Spoiler, they won't. They're sleeping, or pretending to be. You step closer, and he finally notices you. Ah, he says, relieved. The bell. What does it mean? You shrug, because honestly, it might have meant anything, or nothing. Sometimes bells just rang because someone leaned on the rope. This is the problem with medieval communication: no subtitles. Historians still argue whether towns had codified bell systems for visitors or if they expected outsiders to just figure it out. Some say larger cities used posted notices near the gates. Others think people were just perpetually confused. Is it war, the man asks? You shake your head. Food. Another shake. Is someone dead? Now you're unsure. The man sighs and sits down next to a barrel, clearly giving up. You feel for him. You really do. Because when you're a stranger in a bell-led world, everything sounds like a warning. You decide to sit too. And for a moment, you both just listen. The tower doesn't ring again, but something does. A chime, not a bell this time, but the sharp wooden clack of a nearby wind chime. You glance over to see it swaying gently on the porch of a narrow house. It's made of bones, small ones, possibly animal, possibly not. You both scoot a little farther from it. The man clears his throat. Do they always use bells? You nod. For time, danger food meetings, bathing death. He blinks. Bathing. You smile. Twice a year, if you're lucky. He lets out a long groan. God, I miss showers. You both laugh softly. It echoes in the quiet. He pulls out a hunk of cheese wrapped in cloth and tears it in two, offering you half. It smells suspiciously like old feet. You take it anyway, because at this hour, hospitality outranks hygiene. You sit in silence for a while, chewing while the stars do their glittery, slow dance overhead. The cheese sticks to your teeth in ways that feel borderline criminal. Then, a new sound. Your companion stiffens, but it's just a rooster, a lazy one, probably confused by a candlelight or just dramatically early. Either way, it crows like it has something to prove. You both nod at each other. We survived the night, he says. Barely, you think, but you say, yep. He leans back against the barrel and shuts his eyes. You look up again at the bell tower. It stands like a sentinel, quietly observing, no longer ringing. The moonlight slides down its side like a soft exhale. It's tall, but not perfect. Stones jut where they shouldn't. A vine grows halfway up. A crack splits the west-facing wall like a lazy lightning bolt. And yet it endures. You've learned something tonight. The bell didn't just mark time. It held time, gave it shape, gave people permission to pause, or to act, or to question their choices, like eating mystery cheese at 3 a.m. with a stranger. You hear faint footsteps and turn. It's the baker's assistant carrying a basket back from the outer gate. She nods to you, nods to your new friend. Doesn't ask questions, just keeps walking, because not all stories need retelling. You yawn now. It's deep, irresistible, the kind of yawn that folds your whole body inward. Your companion does the same. Maybe it's the cheese, maybe it's the night air, but sleep is tugging on your collar now, firm but gentle. The town agrees. Nothing stirs. Even the rooster has gone quiet, perhaps embarrassed by its premature announcement. You glance one last time at the bell tower, still silent, still watching. You lie back on the cool cobblestone. The world tilts slightly, but it's not disorienting, it's soothing, because everything finally has stopped moving except the stars. Let them have their moment. You don't remember closing your eyes, but the world is softer now, less sharp around the edges. You're lying flat on the stones of the square, and even they've decided not to complain about your weight tonight. The town breathes in long, slow sighs all around you. There's no bell now, no echo, no footsteps, just a hush so complete that even your thoughts tiptoe. You hear the faint rustle of wind through laundry lines above you, draped like sleepy flags between windows, and you wonder how many people are curled up behind those walls. Families, bakers, blacksmiths, that one guy who still insists pigeons are sacred, probably even the night watchman asleep on his post again. You wouldn't blame him. Not much happens now. The town has gone from being ruled by bells to ruled by silence. And in its own way, the silence is louder. Still, you stay awake. Not because you're resisting sleep, but because you want to witness this rare moment, the world at absolute zero. No chores, no calls, no smells of boiled cabbage. The stars keep doing their job above you, moving in that subtle, almost smug way stars do. It's not performance. It's just what they are. Reliable, quiet, much like the town's rhythms, if you think about it. Bell-bred curfew, market rest. The sounds might vanish, but the order remains. You wonder about the next bell, what it will signal. Will it be the soft call of morning prayer, or a cheerful clang from the merchant who always wakes up too early? Maybe it'll be a warning bell again, just for the drama. That guy at the gate would love that. Historians still debate whether these overnight silences were real or if there was always some secret business in the dark affairs of guilds, whispered deals, hidden liaisons. Personally, you'd believe any of it. After all, if you live in a world run by bells, you also live in the spaces between them. And that's where the real stories hide. Your back complains slightly, reminding you that stone plazas are not feather mattresses. But you smile, because in this moment, everything is where it should be. You turn your head and see the stranger still sleeping beside the barrel arms, crossed hat pulled over his face like a makeshift curtain. You hope his dreams are slightly less weird than your night has been, though frankly, that bar is low. The sky lightens, not much, but just enough for the black to peel back into deep blue. The kind of blue that means sunrise is stretching in the wings, not quite ready to take center stage. The bell hasn't rung yet, but it will. And when it does, the town will blink itself awake, creaking like a giant wooden cart. People will yawn. Carts will roll. Doors will slam. Cats will pretend to be aloof. And someone will argue about turnip prices like it's a matter of national security. The magic will dissolve a little, but that's okay. Because the magic was always just noticing what others ignore. You sit up slowly. Crumbs still cling to your shirt. Your shoes are scuffed from the wanderings. There's cheese residue on your fingers you choose not to think too hard about. But your eyes are clear. You watched a medieval town survive the night, with bells and bread and quiet humans quietly existing. And you were part of it. You rise, stretch your arms toward the graying sky, and glance at the bell tower one more time. Still silent. Still. But now you hear something else. Footsteps behind you. The baker again, this time with fresh loaves in her arms, already warm. She pauses as she passes, offers you one with a nod. You accept, grinning, and mutter thanks. She keeps walking, and a few seconds later, as if on cue, dong, the bell, slow, deep, measured. Not a warning, just a welcome. The town is stirring its time. And finally, you're ready to go. So now as the sun quietly tucks a golden line under the rooftops, and the world prepares to yawn itself into motion again, you can let go. You've wandered a night without electric lights or digital clocks. No notifications. Just the sound of old metal swinging in ancient towers. Just bread and silence and the clumsy grace of a life long before yours. Your breath is slower now. Let it stay that way. Let your body settle. Your eyes grow heavy. There are no more bells to answer tonight. No cobblestones beneath you. Just your pillow, soft and kind. Think of the stars again, how they stayed with you, how they kept time better than any bell ever could. You don't need to remember every detail, just the feeling of being safe, of being still, of being forgotten by urgency. Because right now, the only bell you need is the soft thump of your heartbeat, steady, rhythmic enough. So let go. Let sleep wrap around you like a wool cloak. Let your dreams carry the echo of faraway towers and half-forgotten towns. And maybe, if you listen closely in your dreams, you'll hear one more bell, not loud, not sharp, just a little chime saying, you made it.